Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Carlos. I was the last minute invited yesterday, so I'm sort of colado with a few notes here. And I'll do my best. I don't have, like Ricardo, the text timed to 5 minutes. So here I go. Let me start with, my talk is resource wars in Latin America. There's a whole literature on Africa and resource wars. Paul Collier coined the term conflict trap, linking natural resource export-oriented economies intensive in natural resources, the resource curse that exposed to fluctuations in prices and therefore boom bust, to cycles of violence. When the economy expands, there is welfare, but when there is changes in prices and the economy busts, there is activities that are more prone to violence. You see coltan in the DRC, oil in Nigeria, diamonds in Sierra Leone. Those are the resource wars. Now, what happens when all those natural resources are illicit? The problem is compounded, for sure. What happens when the natural resource traded is cocaine, or gasoline smuggling, or illegal mining? All legal goods, but or illegal per se or in the way they were exploited. Well, here's the reality in Latin America. And let me just, they were mentioned, but let me remind everybody of a few examples, recent examples. Let's look at the Catatumbo region, where there's been war in March between dissident FARC and ELN, fractions and factions, dissidents of dissidents, whose goal is to control the cocaine hub and the mineral resources in that area. Let's look at Ecuador, where cycles of violence have permeated and poisoned political life. Someone mentioned the assassination of Fernando Villavicencio as a prime example of brutal violence. And just now, we hear Yvonne about the Correa period. Let's look at, of course, Venezuela, that has been labeled a narco-terrorist regime, not just now, but in 2020 by the Department of Justice. And the indictment has been in the docs ever since. Now, the State Department picked it up and added a wave of, we may say, political pressure to a legal case that had already existed. Let's look at Mexico, where it's a legend, the activities of the cartels. But think about this. Mexico is a federal country. Carlos talked about federalism. Mexico is a federal country, also very strong federalism. But how about the names of the cartels? It's a federal structure of cartel activities. Sinaloa, cartel. Jalisco, New Generation, cartel. New Michoacan Family, cartel. Well, the illegal activities reproduce the institutions of the country in a very, if you want, perverse way, in a very funny but perverse funny. But think about the future of our region. Think about lithium. A hub of lithium up in the Andes, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. A boom of no precedent, but cocaine growing and smuggling next door in Bolivia. Think about rare earth minerals. The DR presumably has the largest reserve of rare earth minerals in the world. If confirmed, it will be about 90%. out of this world. That's a state, a normal state. But think about the neighbor. The deposits of rare earth minerals in the DR are in the Pedernales province, which is right next to Haiti, a state captured by criminal gangs. That's the reality of our region. We need to look at two things. First, states in charge of criminal organizations are no longer states. They are just criminal organizations. And to grant them political status is misleading. It serves to rehabilitate them, it serves to normalize them, and ultimately legitimize. Maduro is a dictator. That's a brutal authoritarian regime. That's good for them. It's good because there are many authoritarian regimes in the world, and those states are legitimate actors. North Korea, Russia, Iran. This is a different category, and we shouldn't give them the benefit of rehabilitation. There is something else, and I'm concluding. This is a political regime. Crime is beyond corruption. Corruption has initially, or does initially, fuel and finance criminal activities, but it takes over. Corruption is not enough of a term because it's ultimately benign. Corruption refers to a public official who keeps 10% for his pocket. No, this is a different thing. This is a state, a parallel state. This is a different form of sovereignty. Let me conclude. In almost every country, with a paper I wrote recently, in almost every country of the region, the map of the state as a bureaucratic and legal apparatus has rarely overlapped with the political map. Large swaths of statelessness in our continent. But in large regions of the region, the state is absent today. It is private actors, actually. Eduardo Gamarra mentioned the absentee state. It is private actors who administer justice, collect taxes, and control the means of violence. A corrupt version of all this, that is. Drug and human traffickers, guerrillas, illegal miners, and a conglomerate of all of these warlords compete with the state for territorial control and ultimately sovereignty. Now, you know that Latin America is the most violent region in the world, a region that CELAC in 2014 declared region of peace. Wishful thinking, for sure. 15 of the top 20 most homicidal cities in the world are in Latin America. And with 8.1% of the population, world population, Latin America accounts for 26% of the planet's violent deaths. That is the war. A war that we are losing day by day and that we are victimized day by day throughout the region. I remember years ago, well, it was Colombia, it was Medellin. Well, no, it's the region as a whole. And the wars is one more thing. Ricardo mentioned Chile and Tren de Aragua. Is Tren de Aragua capable of taking over the US? Certainly not. But it's capable of doing a lot of damage. And talk about a violation of sovereignty and a war of aggression, right? We talk about wars of aggression, Russia taking over Ukraine. But the operation, the Tren de Aragua in Chile, violating sovereignty, an aggression to the Chilean government, and committing a crime on an exile, which is a decision by the government to grant exile to somebody, Teniente Ojeda, is an example of that war. And if we don't wake up, we're going to lose the war even worse. Thank you.